Welcome to another episode of Kanopy Conversations. Today we're thrilled to be speaking with filmmaker Pablo Berger, whose Academy Award nominated animated feature, Robot Dreams, is now on Kanopy. Pablo, thanks so much for joining us from Madrid.
My pleasure. As the father of Robot Dreams, I love to talk about my child.
A very proud papa.
Yeah, very proud papa.
As we begin, could you tell us briefly about how you got your start in filmmaking? Kanopy is available to many university students around the world, and as they prepare to enter this industry, I think it is always helpful to hear from working filmmakers about where they began their career.
I made my first short film in Spain, and without knowing anything. I call it my punk rock period. I just made a film without knowing anything. But luckily for me, it was a big success in the festival circuit. So I got a scholarship to study film in NYU. I have an MFA from NYU. So I lived 10 years in New York. I made many short films and I became a filmmaker there. And one of the main reasons that I made Robot Dreams is because it's a love letter to that period that I spent in New York.
Yeah, the 1980s in New York City is a prominent part of Robot Dreams, and it's a beautiful homage. As a child of the 80s myself, I remember everything from the tape decks to the signage and the restaurants of the period. So it was great to see so much of that featured throughout the film. That's an amazing introduction. Throughout your career, you've taken on many challenges and new ways to tell a story. Your latest film, Robot Dreams, is in fact your first animated film. Can you tell us how you decided to enter the field of animation and why you chose to begin that journey by adapting Sarah Varon's graphic novel of the same name?
Yeah, Robot Dreams is my fourth feature film, but as you said, it's my first animated film. And I promise you, I never thought about making an animated film. I love animation films, or I used to love animation films as an audience, but I thought I was just a live action director. But what happened is, long time ago, like over 10 years ago, this book, Robot Dreams from Sarah Baron, this amazing graphic novel, fell into my hands. I read it and I fell in love with the story, and the end moved me very, very deeply. So after three features in live action, I decided contact Sarah Baron, meet her in New York, and told her, Sarah, I want to make an animated 2D version of your graphic novel. So that's how all started. And that's how I became now I'm a live action director and an animation director. And and honestly, I just think that directors are directors. Guillermo del Toro said when he got the Oscar for Pinocchio, and I have repeated many times, and we repeated, animation is not a genre, and directors can direct different types of films.
No, absolutely. The world of animation is broad and wide and includes every genre under the sun. So definitely excited to hear about your journey into animation and the learning curve. Let's talk about that learning curve a little bit because I'd love to know what similarities and what differences did you experience in making the transition from live action filmmaking to animation, and specifically those challenges behind the scenes. Because obviously, when you're a live action director, you're with the camera, you're with the cinematographer, you're with the actors and actresses. Uh, but in the world of animation, you're left to describe that scene to an animator, and then they in turn translate that into a moving image. So I'd love to hear about the similarities and differences between those two formats for you as a filmmaker.
Actually, I was very afraid when I started the production because it was my first experience in animation. I don't draw. I don't know. I didn't know the techniques about animation. So I started thinking like, what should I do? How should I get started? And a director is as good as his team. So you have to get the best. So I got the best art director, Jose Luis Agreda, somebody that I admire and respected his work very much. And I got the best animation director, Benoit Ferremont, one of the great animation directors from Europe. And of course, I also included people from my team in live action, my editor, Fernando Franco, my sound designer, Fabiola Ardoyo, my producers that they work with me in live action. Oyuko Harami, which is the music editor that has worked with me since the beginning of my career. So the crew is a combination of live action and animation films. So once I had a team and I got comfortable, I realized little by little that it was not so different from live action. A director has to tell a story and has to visualize it and has to get great performances. The performance, they don't matter if they're actors or they're animated actors, you know. So in that case, those two things, telling the story and getting great performances, that was my obsession. And I use my experience working with actors to direct animated characters. So I think that was the thing that I could bring to animation. And then there's one quality that is has to have an animated animation director is like patient, you know. It's 5 years of your life. When you make an animated film, it's many, many years. Like in live action, maybe is 1 year of your life in terms of production. I'm not talking about financing. Financing can be long time, but the production of a live action could be 1 year. But a production of animation, 5 years go very easily. And if there's one big difference, is that in animation, instead of working with actors, you work with animators. But at the end, the way I talk with an actor and the way I talk with animator, they were not very different because I was lucky that I have an animation director that helped me translate my directions to the animators. So for me, the experience was not traumatic at all. It was very enjoyable. Of course, it was very hard work, and I hope I can make another animated film in the future.
Am I correct? You also had to film this COVID era, is that right? So you brought your entire team to Madrid. Is that also accurate?
Definitely. Let's see, like when you ask, yeah, I forgot to answer you. What was the biggest challenges of making this film? And there was one gigantic challenge, and a bigger challenge than me making an animated film is that originally the project was going to be produced at a studio called Cartoon Saloon in Ireland that has done the Book of Kells, the Wolf Walkers. They loved the
Mhm.
project, and it was going to be their first feature film, not directed from somebody from the studio. And when we were about to start the pre-production of the film, the COVID came. So suddenly, Cartoon Saloon couldn't make the film, and we had to create a pop-up studio in Spain. So suddenly, my producers, myself, we had to hire animators and artists from all over Europe, and I was obsessed that I didn't want to work in remote. So of course we were all using masks. Of course we follow all the COVID precautions, but we were all working together. And I think you can tell when we made this film. There was so much love in the making of this film. We had two studios. We had one in Madrid and another one in Pamplona, but we had to get the space, buy the computers, create the pipeline, get the software, hire hundreds of people to make the film happen. So honestly, that was the biggest challenge of making this film, to make it through COVID.
Yeah, and that's true, I think, of everybody across the industry. I didn't know the story about Cartoon Saloon, so that's fascinating, especially for folks that are aware of the beautiful animation that studio
Yeah,
produces as well. So again, I think all of us in the industry who worked during that period have got a story to tell about navigating that time, the protocols, the
yeah,
precautions, et cetera. Because it obviously was a global crisis and it impacted everyone's, work and life. Uh, all right, I'd love to talk just a little bit further about that production team and what you were able to achieve in the animated format for filmmakers on a budget. Maybe excluding those that work on like the summer blockbuster level budgets that
yeah.
are enormously inflated. Did you find the animated format offered freedoms that would be too expensive in live action? And I'm thinking specifically of your Buzzley Berkeley musical number with the overhead shots of hundreds of dancing flowers, as well as the exciting sled ride that Dog takes, which is reminiscent of action-packed car chases or action sequences from spy films, etc. So I'd be curious to know if you found the animated format kind of unleashed a creativity and a freedom that live action didn't offer.
Completely. I agree 100%. It opened me another way of telling stories. As I said before, it's my fourth film and it's a European budget. It's a good budget. I was able to make the film the way I wanted to make, but I can tell you that scenes that appear in Robot Dreams, I couldn't have made it in live action because, as you said, there's a Bugsy Berkeley musical extravaganza with thousands of tap dancers only that scene would have cost the 5 million euros, or an action scene that is, as you said, like is worth it to be in a James Bond movie. So yeah, I think to make a film in animation, there is no limit.
Right.
The sky is the limit. The limitation is the imagination of the team or the creator. But that in live action, that's not the case. In live action, the budget is always there. But in animation, once you get a specific budget, you can make anything. And I was lucky enough that my producers have raised enough money so I can say that I could make the film that I wanted to make, honestly.
The animated format again is such a creative lens through which to view a world, right? And it doesn't have to be our world; it could be any world. My sons last night asked, well, did you have robots in the 1980s? And I'm like, no, no. I was like, that's part of his story. So it's dog and robot living in a world. And then they asked, well, were animals walking around on I'm like, no, no. It's like, my 1980s is not what you're seeing on the screen. That's a world that is created within animation, and again, the freedom and the creativity and the imagination that's lended onto the screen via that format, it is so striking and so beautiful throughout. Uh, One of the other things that I think has been most talked about with respect to Robot Dreams uh, is the fact that it is dialogue free, but let's be clear, it is far from being a silent film. In fact, the soundtrack is loaded with ambient sounds of the city, which in turn are complemented by music throughout. Can you talk about the sound design for the film, from the effects to the musical numbers, and how you were able to use those sounds to help tell your story?
Yeah, I'm happy that you say that because it truly, some people say it's a silent film, and it's not a silent film. It's a dialogue-free film, but with extremely complex sound design. It's the most complex sound design of all my films, and I work with a great team of sound designers, led by Fabiola Ordoyo, and they were working for 6 months to create this kind of like sound world of New York in the 80s because the sound changes with the time. It's not the same. The alarms, the fire alarm, the police alarms, the cars, the sound of the city is different in the 80s that is now in the 2025, so we had to do a lot of research to achieve that. What I was lucky myself is that I had already made another film without dialogue. In 10 years ago, I made a film called Blancanieves that if you don't have it in Kanopy, you should try to
We
have
do.
it.
We do
You do
have it
have,
on
have it.
Kanopy. We have it in
Oh,
the US and we have it in Canada. So we have
oh.
it, it's available to our US and Canadian viewers on Kanopy.
Dude, let's do some product placement. You guys are watching Robot Dreams interview and you like Robot Dreams. I encourage you, as the father of Blancanieves, that you watch the sister film of Robot Dreams, that is a dialogue-free film that takes place in Spain in the 1920s. So the fact that I had that experience before, it really kind of helped me to make Robot Dreams. And that's why also one of the reasons that I made Robot Dreams. But the big difference in Blancanieves that, yes, that film was a homage to silent cinema, So it has music from beginning to end. And in Robot Dreams, of course, there's lots of music. There's an amazing soundtrack, original music of Alfonso Villayonga, but there's a lot of pop music, of course, including the unforgettable September, the Earth, Wind, and Fire, and sound design. And that was also something that it was like something exciting for me because I was making a dialogue-free film, which is very different from another dialogue-free film, Blancanieves, that I made over 10 years ago.
Yeah, Robot's Dreams has such a rich soundtrack, and it's a love letter to New York of that era. From the the engine sounds, phones, because it's all landlines.
Payphones, you see people talking on the payphone and hitting like,
Yeah,
and
clicking the receiver. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Those are all sounds that were very, it definitely brought me back to that time period. Yeah, my sons both asked about the landlines. Why were your phones connected with cords? And I'm like, well, that's how the technology worked back then.
But I love the comments of your son. I think it's amazing, the fact that, talking about the anthropomorphic characters and animals walking and the robots and yeah, but what I like is that my goal as a director is to make credible something that is incredible. So I love the idea that your son, when he was watching the film, he was just believing that this world existed of robot dreams.
Yeah, it's a wonder, how their minds work, and again, just to escape into what they're seeing on screen. It's always fun to watch a film through their eyes because they experience it, I think, a little differently than I do. Uh,
Yeah, and I love the idea that I made a film that is open, a film that doesn't exclude the audience, a film that your son that is very young and you that you're a cinephile, or maybe somebody that is a cinephile just goes to a multiplex and just buys and just watches a commercial film. Definitely from all my films, I feel this is the one that gets together different people from different generations, and that makes me very, very happy.
That's great. My last two, I've got a couple of questions left, but they specifically are on this topic, so I'm glad we're keeping kind of a narrative thread here, of the topics. So, as we discussed, Robot Dreams is free of dialogue, but viewers around the world can easily follow the story of Dog and Robot. Much of that is relayed through the eyes and facial expressions of the characters in the film. This seems natural, but it must have been a calculated decision during the animation process. Could you speak to the power of eyes in telling a story and specifically your use of this strategy in Robot Dreams?
Well, yes. As I said before, I had this wonderful experience of making a dialogue-free film before, Blancanieves, that really helped me a lot to make this film. And I also said before that what I thought what I could bring to animation world is great performances. I have worked with great actors in my live action films. And as a director, when I direct in a live action film, I'm just always by the camera looking at the eyes of the character. As a director, I'm obsessed about the characters, not what they say, what the eyes communicate. So when I was working with animators, I was obsessed about the same. There's a tendency in animation, not always, but there's so many animated films that they overact. They do all these gigantic gestures, and when they're sad, they're gigantic tears, and when they scream, they open their mouth. And I wanted to be, very content, very, less is more. For me in cinema, the acting less is more. So for me, the eyes and the pupils say so much about the character. So we were obsessed about the eyes. Oh, I was completely obsessed. So I was always looking at the eyes of dog and robot, and that they would communicate emotion. Because at the end, Robot Dreams is an emotional film. Of course, it's funny. Of course, it's packed of action and their musical numbers. And I hope that people, when they come to see, they enjoy it and they get entertained. But at the end, it's an emotional ride. And I wanted that the audience that come to see this film, they really connect, they feel empathy with these characters, and all that empathy and connection comes through their eyes.
The subtlety in telling a story in that fashion draws you in so close as a viewer. We literally, the entire family, as we were watching, I could see everybody moving up a little bit on the couch. which is fascinating because again, there's no dialogue that you need to hear, but they were just so fascinated with the way in which the characters are telling their story. Again, through the power of the eyes. Amazing way to tell the story. You hinted already at the age, range for this title, but I'd love to talk about one of the uh, kind of perplexing things about the industry and how they viewed this title. So, as the filmmaker, who do you view as the intended audience of Robot Dreams? And I bring this up because the film actually received a PG-13 rating from the MPAA, and I quote, "For some language and smoking." I really love the some language because there's no language in the movie
Yeah.
at all. I'm assuming there's a hand gesture, at one point when a character flips the bird. I'm assuming that's what they took issue with. But I rewatched the film last night with my younger children, and they loved it. I'd be interested to hear from you. Who do you perceive as the audience, be that younger, older, or the complete range of film viewers overall?
Well, actually, I have always made all my films for me first. First, I have to love what I'm making, because at the end, I'm going to be like I can only have my intuition, what things make me laugh, what things make me cry, what make things make me get scared. So I made the film for me. And this always happened that way, but I always found a big audience that share the same reaction to me. And in this film, also when I was writing, I felt that as the book, is for all audiences. There's nothing that appears in the storytelling that a 3-year-old cannot understand. There's nothing that even from any nationality, because there's no language, so it could be understood. Maybe it's like a very ambitious goal, but it was not a goal. It was just done in a very natural way. But as we said before, this film is from somebody, a kid that is 3 to 103 on and over. I think we wanted a wide audience. This film doesn't exclude. This film is not like for cinephiles. This is not for kids. This is not for like people that love commercial. It's for everybody. And as you said, yeah, when I talked with Neon and Tom Quinn, the president of Neon, and he said, Pablo, we laugh, because yeah, it's a PG-13. And now you're saying about the language, it's visual language. There's a moment that there's like they stick the middle finger, one punk rocker, and they're smoking cigarettes. Of course, punk rockers are going to stick the middle finger and they smoke cigarettes. But it's kind of like so hypocritical that there's so many films that they're PG or under, and they're like violence and people dying and situations that they're really non morally appropriate for kids to watch, but the kids watch it. And a film that is, I would say, very like a clean, and I think with a very nice message that I think young kids should watch it. I think now we will give a message, for the parents that you have small kids, even if it appears PG-13, if your kid is 3, you can watch it. The director says so, and Kanopy approves it too. So it's just this PG-13 is not a real thing.
Yeah, we've actually included it in our family friendly category, and we
Yeah.
talked specifically about the rating and whether or not we thought that would be a concern. But again,
Yeah.
several of us have viewed it. We all love it. And again, it there's only a small moment in the film that with the smoking and the middle finger.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a universal story and an international story. It's about friendship and loneliness, and navigating that as an individual in the world, and the relationships that we develop over the course of a lifetime. So, yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful story. And it's a beautiful story that received critical acclaim and international acclaim. So, for my last question, I'd love to just talk about some of that because I know this film actually premiered at TIFF, the Toronto International Film Festival, for folks that don't know the acronym. Uh, Robot Dreams was also nominated for an Academy Award in the Best Animated Feature Film category. I'd love to hear about your experience of receiving that nomination and then also your ability to attend the award ceremony as again a celebrated filmmaker who again brought such a beautiful story to the screen?
Well, the journey started a little before TIFF, Toronto. We went to the Cannes Film Festival official selection, red carpet, tuxedo. So for a director to go to the official selection of Cannes, that's a dream. So it's a dream come true. So after TIFF, and then of course the Annie Award, that's the Oscars of animation that we got, Annie Award. And of course the Oscars. The Oscar is the cherry on the top, For a director, we all dream to go to the Oscars, not only for what they mean, is because it means your film is going to be global. And that's what we directors want. We want as many people to watch the film. And the Oscars, I encourage for the people that are watching this interview, go to YouTube and look at the reaction of Pablo when Berger, when they received the nomination. We scream like crazy. We really we were so happy for us, the producers and others. I think there are almost like 1 million people have seen us screaming when we got the news. And of course, we were very lucky that in Cannes Film Festival, Neon acquired the rights for the distribution, and they made an amazing job. And they went with us through the whole Oscar campaign. And it all starts months before the Oscars, and there's a key moment that is the luncheon for the nominees. That's where you meet all the other nominated. And I must tell you, it was such an amazing moment, to be able to meet Steven Spielberg and have a short chat with him, meet Martin Scorsese. I already got the Oscar just meeting two of my biggest heroes, and of course, the Academy Award, the event itself, the gala, that's fun. That's entertaining. I really, it is one of those great moments in your life that you would say, I was there and I was part of this big show, and I enjoyed every minute of the experience of being nominated for the Oscars.
I love to hear it. That joy is infectious in the YouTube video, and to see, again, the thrill. It takes a village to make a movie. We all know that in the industry, and
Yeah.
just the sheer time and effort, especially for an animated film, because those timetables are a lot longer. Because it's 24 frames a second, right, to get a film like that made.
And our film it was a small film. It was David against Goliath. It was a French-Spanish co-production, and the other films were, great films, of course, Spider-Man, Nimona, Elemental, and of course, The Boy and the Heron of the great Miyazaki. And I must say, another great thing about this Oscar experience is that except Miyazaki that didn't come to LA and it was not part of the events, with the other directors, we got so close. We got so, the directors of Nimona and Spider-Man and Elemental, and we were really like a gang, So we were like, it didn't matter who won. Of course, won the master Miyazaki, and
Mhm.
he, of course, but I must say also that part of being part of that group of the nominees, it was a lot of fun. Pity that we couldn't meet Hayao Miyazaki. Maybe one day.
I love it's such a labor of love to make a film. So the I'm glad you got the time to enjoy that moment and spend that moment and celebrate your film in such a way. Because as I've said repeatedly, it's a stunning film to watch. It's an homage to New York City in the 1980s. But it's also just such a lovely story between two central characters, and the journey they take together and apart is so important throughout. Uh, those are all the questions I had today, and I'm so grateful. Thanks so much for joining us today. Our viewers, for our viewers, Robot Dreams is now live in the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. Access may vary by country and library, but log on to Kanopy.com to see if you can view this beautiful film without ads or subscriptions through participating libraries and universities today. Pablo, I cannot thank you much. I can't thank you enough. Sorry. I get a little tongue tied in these interviews. So I appreciate you joining us from Madrid, especially navigating the time zone difference. and sharing the story of Robot Dreams with me and our viewership. It's a lovely story, and I'm so excited for our viewers to have the opportunity to see it and enjoy that journey with Robot and Dog.
Thank you, Christian. It was a pleasure. I'm waiting Canopy arrives to Spain, and you'll sure have a subscriber here when you come.
We are making our way further into Europe, so I trust me. We're efforting as hard as we can to make Canopy a global offering as much as we can. So again, thank you so much, Pablo. We definitely appreciate your time here at Canopy, and for our viewers, you are going to absolutely fall in love with this film. So please check it out as soon as you can.